Absolutely. Thank you. My next question, average scores on steps. Let us say there's this candidate who has average scores. Like you said, some of the filters are anywhere between 220, 240. Uh, Once you have average scores, how can students uh, enhance their application? What can they do to strengthen their application to be visible to programs?
To be visible to programs is to have a connection that knows somebody in that program, to potentially rotate in that program, even in observership form. A lot of the programs do not just have the ability to do it. As you know, like if if any of these candidates reaches out to one of us, our hospital will probably not allow us to bring them in. So that's kind of the challenge. But if they go through the medical school as medical students, we do have opportunities to give them the ability to come in. So doing clinical observerships, and I think what would really help is during those observerships to try to establish a way to do our research. Okay. So we do get not infrequently candidates who only focus on research. They moved to United States, got some sort of a business visa or something, student visa, and they're only doing research. And you look at an application, they've been in the country for 3 years and they haven't done a single observership. Okay. As you know, Dev, clinical skill is a perishable skill. And if you don't do it for a while, the ability does perish to do it. So I think it's very important that, and I understand that most of the people will come in through some research path into the country. It's very important that you keep your clinical exposure active, and that tends to be pretty easy with the mentors during the fellowship, during the research period of time. So going with them, so when they give you the recommendation letter, they say he's not just great in the lab doing research, but they're also great in our morning report or in our rounds. I think that that's very important. And if you get research in, let's say, neurology, but you want to do neurosurgery, ask your mentor to put you in touch with a surgeon that maybe you can follow around so you can have that surgery recommendation letter.
This is helpful. Uh, my next question is, what factors do surgical programs consider to invite candidates for interviews?
So first was the score. As I said, that kind of gets you through the door. If the scores are low, you will not be seen by the program. Like the filter will not send your application to the program. That is the one important thing. Once you've crossed that first path, then the application does need to look a little thick. Okay, so some research, if possible, some publication or some sign that you're working on something is important. I think what makes the application strong is US recommendation letters. Okay. Recommendation letters by, and this goes back to, again, having clinical exposure, by surgery clinicians in the United States. Okay. Naturally, we don't disregard if you have a um, ophthalmology recommendation letter or a gynecology recommendation letter. But if you have a recommendation letter from an active surgeon who is working, it is very different.
Wow. Now, what would programs consider to rank candidates after the interviews? Could you elaborate on a few factors or things that programs look at?
That is a very good question. I think this is the part where the interview carries quite a bit of weight. Okay. You have to be memorable. And during the interview, you have to interview well. You really need to try to hone down your sort of slow, clear speaking abilities. Okay. Um, I have an ear for accents and I understand them well because I have one myself. And but I am the only one in an interview panel of, during the interview process of 10, 12 people who does that. So I think that's very important. The way you carry yourself during the interview is really good. You really cannot be too verbal, but if you appear too introspective as well, that is not a good thing. So there's a sweet spot, that if you're not engaged in the interview, you will not be remembered and you will not be ranked, or you will not be ranked high enough. So I think the interview carries a lot of weight. Then we do go through all the sort of other details, grades in medical school, steps, if there was any research, how did the recommendation letters look like? And then the personal statement. The personal statement really has to have something in it that strikes you. Um, and there are personal statements that I used to read as a chief resident that I remember still because they were so impactful, and they carried a lot of weight. A bland personal statement will not hurt you, but it will not help you. But a personal statement with things that might not be true from the rest of your application will be a red flag that will not consider you. I'm not sure how your program does it, Dev, but our program, we will start with do not ranks. Okay. And because, as you said, there's a lot of time and effort that goes, and the candidates that we feel need our attention, we try to devote that. And then we have some candidates that we feel are not the right fit for our program, or they're not the right fit for our profession. And, we will bring them up and we will ask questions. So Dr. X will say, this doctor really struck me this way. And if there's a second voice that supports that, that says, yes, that's the same feeling I got, they will not be ranked. Okay. If somebody cannot really, if it's a singular opinion or the rest of the group does not feel the same way, then we will continue to rank them in the ranking process. We do feel that you cannot connect with every single person you're going to meet in the interview trail. We understand that. So that is why we need to have more than one person come up and say, hey, there was just something with this application that did not feel well with me, or here it says one thing, but then on the application it's something else. We don't have time to vet that. Again, we're going from 600 to 300 to 80 to 5. We do not have time to reach out and vet. It's like, hey, what's this discrepancy in your application? Every discrepancy in the application will be considered as a big negative and will probably exclude you from the ranking.
No, that's well put together. I think, it's very important for students to understand that a properly prepared application is very critical. Well put together application is always important because that will display your professionalism, that will display your true intent on how you want your life to be moving forward because you've invested the time in making that application by looking at the user guide. It is very important to look at an application after using a user guide. Then the follow-up is interview, 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 interview. I keep telling this, and Dr. Mentor has hammered it even harder that interview matters once they have to figure out the next steps in terms of ranking. Now, my last question for you from my side, and then we'll give about 2 to 3 minutes for the folks to put in their chat box questions, and then we'll move on to the questions that the applicants had already asked earlier, and then look at the chat box so that we finish on time by 8:15, and we'll let you catch that flight. Otherwise, we want you here back, so
Yes.
we can't leave you back in New York for another day.
Yes. No, I have a meeting at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning in Fargo, so I really
Oh
need
my,
to. Yes.
yeah. So, what's it? My your final thoughts. I'll ask you right at the end after the chat box questions. But what does a typical interview day look like for a surgery program? I don't know that because I know in medicine it's like we get the student and then they interview with the program director, with the faculty, with somebody else, and then they go through some social, and then they're done. Is it different? How is it different?
It's not much different. As you know, COVID really changed how we do interviews. They used to be very uniform and they used to be in person. We're not doing interviews in person, which I think really I find it as a benefit. I remember being broke in America and having to fly from Houston to New York to do my interviews and going to the movies because I couldn't afford a hotel. So I would just go and spend the night watching movies at the movies and then go from the movies to the airport because you'd buy one $5 ticket and you'd just kind of like bounce around. So I think it's really helped that we do it virtually because folks do not need to fly in. Okay. And I think that has really made it attainable for a lot of people, which due to financial reasons were not being seen, were being silenced. So I think that that is very good. Currently, the way we do our interviews are all virtual. We we will have a full day on our end of interviews, but for candidates, it would be a half day. Okay. So we will start at 7 a.m. with a educational conference with our residents, where our residents present and faculty moderates, just to sort of see the dynamic in the program, see how that works. And then from that point on, half of the candidates will be released to come back at the second part of the day, and then half of the candidates will remain. They will remain in a Zoom room, and in that room, we will have our coordinators of the program and very variable levels of residence where they can just chat. We just want people to chit chat there. Um, very careful about the chat room. Okay. If you turn your camera off and you don't say anything, we know that you're not engaged. We Programs keep track of that. Okay. So being engaged, having your camera on, treating coordinators with utmost respect, chatting them up with, not just silly questions, but actual questions. Um, it's very important. Sorry.
Your fire life safety.
And then trying to connect with the residents as well. Residents, um, they are younger than us. They're not as experienced as us, but they're smarter than us. So we take their word very, very to heart, and that takes a lot of heart. So keep that in mind. Then on the other end, while you're having these break times, faculty like myself are interviewing candidates. We do 20 to 20 minute slots. So you have 20 minutes to tell us who you are, to impress us, and to give us assurances that you will be a successful surgeon. And that is a huge feat. That is impossible to do. That's very difficult to do. So practice how you're gonna do that. Okay. Be very, very succinct and have your message that you will give out. Okay. At the end of those all sessions, we have a 1 hour break on our faculty side, and you guys will be completely done. During that time, we all gather and talk together. Okay. If there was a scripted single message given to all 4 or 5 of us, that is not a very good sign. So have 4 different messages ready that say the same thing. Okay. That is very, very important. Does that make sense? You know,
It does.
if
It does.
if we're interviewing Abiraj and my APD says Abiraj told me this, it's like, oh, that's exactly what he told me. And then the chairman says, that's exactly what he told me verbatim. Well, we didn't get to meet you. Okay. We got to meet a very scripted version of you. So that might be harmful. So just keep that in mind. That's a very important part because you get to meet us for 20 minutes. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer, but that's it. And we need to get to know you. You need to impress us. You need to become memorable. Okay. You will meet and you will know. I mean, you guys are all super smart, super well trained, and you can pick up on personality traits. I tend to be a little bit more boisterous, a little bit laugh a little bit more and stuff like that. Take advantage of that. I don't know, be funny and, mirror. And then you will have a very dry chairman or dry person. Be very serious with them. Okay. It doesn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes to figure out which one it is, right? We all know that. So try to, I don't know, mirror their personalities for you to be remembered. Naturally, we want to see the most genuine you, but again, you can help yourself.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I think you have to play it by the ear, understand the situation,
Mm-hmm.
figure out how you can best be uh, able to display yourself in a successful way. Uh, is there a one question that you normally ask residents during interviews? There's some people, they start off by asking, "Tell me about yourself." Some people ask by saying, "What's that? Why choose our program?" Is there one question, if you would like to share?
Yes, I do ask why our program and why North Dakota, but I do ask that because we're so unique. You know, I think all of our candidates seem to be from the all the applicants here seem to be from the subcontinent.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. If you're from Tamil and you're applying to Kashmir, why are you applying there? You know, it's you need to have a very strong reason why. And it's the same with North Dakota. North Dakota is very unique. We're very up north. It's very cold. It's rural. It's very different than your picture of America that you got from the TV. Okay. So why our program? Okay. And the answer to us will be I love rural populations, try to establish some sort of communication from your background. I come from a rural background. I want to help these populations. I don't mind the weather, or actually, I would love to live in the snow because I'm from South India. I've never lived in the snow, or I'm from North India and I enjoy the cold weather, right? Or Nepal. So, those are important things for you to make a connection to have an answer for every program that you go to. Really find what's in that program that you can draw from your life experiences to form a communication. Make sure it's genuine, and then express that. So I'm one of the why actually North Dakota. I know like one of my partners, who is the program director for the rural program, he is more of a tell me about yourself and just let you kind of like tell them about yourself and really impress them or trip over your feet and not impress them. Okay. Because sometimes you just let people talk and some red flags will come up. One question I always, and this is variable from candidate to candidate, I will pick something esoteric from the application, from your past, and chat you up about that. And I'm surprised and sort of disappointed sometimes how candidates are not able to talk about something that they put in the application. Okay. Or they're talking, but I can see that there's something not genuine in it. So, make sure that your application is something that you can go to bat for and be the utmost specialist for. When you're talking about it, you need to talk about it. If you're referencing a case in your personal statement that, happened to you or took care of, make sure you know everything about that case. Because sometimes people will put some extravagant things about some major case they took part in taking care of, and then you ask them about it and they fall flat because it was a synthesized case. It wasn't a real case.
Yes, I agree. I recently, just to not take too much time, I'll just spend 30 seconds. So I was reviewing an application and I suddenly saw that the candidate had put in 16 or 17 certifications in that ERAS application. So I saw that and I was like, oh my God, this person has so many certifications. And then I followed it up during the interview and I asked, okay, can you elaborate on this certification that you've mentioned that you just did in September? But Well, to my surprise, the person actually was able to elaborate on what they did. So that kind of gave me that satisfaction that this person was genuine in what they actually put out because they could speak to that certification. Literally 16, 17 certifications. I have not seen an application with so many certifications in the last at least 10 plus years. But that was a surprise. But I still wanted to give that candidate a chance, and they were able to show up that it was genuine. So that's good. Oh, in the interest of time, we're just going to give 2 to 3 minutes to the candidates. Please put your questions in the chat box, and then I'll hand off to Dr. Abhiraj. Abhiraj, you have about 20 minutes. No pressure. And we'll close the session with final thoughts of Dr. Mentor. So you might want to give at least a minute for that or two.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the session. So by the time the candidates drop their questions into the chat box, I would like to continue with the questions that we have got earlier during the registration phase as well. So first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Ahmeti for this wonderful session. And thank you a lot for your time from all of the participants who are here. So we will be talking about some time-sensitive questions in the beginning, and then we will be talking about some other generalized questions later. So the first question to you will be, so if someone applies this late at this time of the math cycle, are there any chances that he or she might be able to acquire an interview?
There is a chance, but that chance is extremely low. In that case, it will be if, we went through our 350 and we couldn't find 80 to interview, then we'll fall back and let's see what else we have. Okay. I personally, but this should not be taken, I was very fortunate and lucky. I personally applied late my first year because by the time I got my, I think it was step 2 CK or something result, I was a little late with the application before I got my ECFMG certificate. So I did get some calls, but they did feel to me like they were filling in spots of people who didn't show up, or they had not reached their quota. Because, you'll interview somewhere, you will see that they love you. You love them, and you don't continue interviewing. You're probably going to match there. Okay, you're a 270, 280, have some good publications, have great letters from Cleveland Clinic or UCLA or somewhere of recommendation, and you'll match in that place. So you won't go to other programs, and then those programs will rush to fill, so they will backfill with late applications. But I do think that it is challenging. It is very, very challenging.
Thank you for your answer. So we have talked a lot about the candidature and the qualities that the candidates should have in order to secure an interview in the surgical specialty. But if I will ask you, what is the one quality that the candidates should not miss when applying for surgical residency, what will you choose that?
It's that intangible signal that you want to do surgery. Okay. I'll share again from my own experience. I only wanted to be a surgeon. I came to do my residency as an expat, not as an immigrant. My plan was to come do residency, go back home. And I remember as a prelim resident, I was asking my faculty for recommendation letters, my attendings. And there was this one specific attending who maybe I didn't connect very well or whatever, and she didn't think I was going to be a surgeon. And she said, okay, well, what else do you want a recommendation letter for? Do you want for, psych? Do you want it for transitional year and stuff like that? I was like, no. I just want one for surgery. And she was like, well, you're an FMG or IMG. You should really have different applications. I was like, you do not understand. Like, if I don't match this year, I'm going to go and do surgery somewhere else. I'm going to go do surgery in Albania, in Kosovo, wherever there's an opportunity, in Austria, whatever there's an opportunity, I will go and do a residency there. I have come here not to move here. I've come here to become a surgeon. And then she became like my biggest ally, because just in that short conversation in the hallway, and I remember specifically which hallway of the hospital it was, I proved to her that, I, with all respect to different specialties, I felt I was born to be a surgeon. And I was going to leave I was going to leave America to go somewhere to become a surgeon. That was more important to me than living here. And I think that's sort of an important aspect is, and if you are coming to live in the United States, then have a backup plan.
That is one of the most beautiful answer I've ever heard on someone about their dreams and passions. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmeti, for that answer. So, in this duration of the math cycle from October to March, how can a candidate improve their CV in order to secure something this session or probably the next session?
I think it's too late for this year. Honestly, I feel it's too late to improve the CV. It's going to be most of the people, when they're interviewing you, they already have the typed form of who you are and what your career is so far. You trying to throw in more things that is more aspirational than something really concrete. Okay. We do get maybe a couple of residents or applicants that tell us, well, I have set up all these rotations to do in April, May, and June, so I am ready right before I start. But up to this point, I really don't have any American clinical experience. And, that's aspirational, good for you, but I cannot take that and weigh it in your application when we meet in January and do our rank list.
Thank you for that. So, someone who have gone through this whole conversation, who have watched the video recording that we are going to post later, have gone through all of your advice, and he or she got invited for an interview. So how can someone make himself memorable during and after the interview?
Again, charisma is an interesting thing, but I think if you're not born with it, it is a skill you can develop. And I think trying to be charismatic and then ramping that up with people who appear to be charismatic and then toning it down with people who are interviewing that are not is important. I think make sure that when you're talking, this is a very important thing. This is a very important thing. Very frequently, and a very off-putting thing is you're talking to somebody, and when they're answering you, they're not looking at you. It is very hard to do that virtually, okay? So people look around the room, their camera is offset over here, but they're looking over here because their screen is somewhere else, okay? We all have a tendency to look at ourselves, so keep that in mind. We're all looking at ourselves on this. We're not looking at the person talking on the big screen, right? So take the little picture of where you are and put that under the camera because you're going to be looking at yourself. Okay. And put it right next to the camera and don't put the camera somewhere away because you're going to keep on looking and you're going to look disinterested in the conversation. So it's very important to maintain as much of that virtual eye contact that you can. Okay. I'm in a hotel room, so my background is blurred. But one thing that I find very interesting is what their background is. Okay. So make a nice background. Okay. Have a simple painting or a simple flower or something like that and have that behind you and keep it clear. Okay. But then be engaged. At this point, I'm a young to mid-career surgeon, but I still consider myself to be young and modern and stuff like that. But appear professional, wear a suit, wear a tie. I think those are all very important things. And ultimately, stress until the moment the interview starts. Once the interview starts, just be yourself.
So, would it be safe to say that at the end of this whole USMLE journey and at the end of the whole interview cycle and all, you just have to convince one human mind.
One human mind times 4.
Yeah.
Or convince one and don't upset the other 3. Okay? Because you will have, if you impress that one person in the meeting, even though they don't know you, they will be your agent in that meeting. Okay? They will help you out. They will say, like, I really like this one. Like, that meeting tends to be a very small group of people, a small committee. And you can say that one person can drive somebody up 4 or 5 spots on the rank list if they really liked you.
So we have some personal question from someone who is asking that, is there any limitation for colorblind people in surgery and surgical matching process?
I don't think there is. That is a very, very interesting question. So that will not have any impact on the ranking process or anything. I'm going to give my personal opinion. Will color blindness prevent you from being the best surgeon you can be? And if you in your back of your mind think that it might, maybe surgery should not be something you pursue. Does that make sense? But it does not necessarily affect the ability. And then there's like different degrees of color blindness as well. So it's very hard to sort of quantify that, but it is not considered to be a variance of ability to become a surgeon. But just think if, you're operating on your nephew, if it would be the best thing or not, if you'd want somebody else.
So we have actually 3 questions fresh from the chat box. I will be dictating that to you.
Mm-hmm.
So Varun is asking, hello sir, I am a USIMZ, a very individual question. So does a patient care technician or surgical scrub technician work carry weight as hands-on experience?
It does.
And we have a question from Dinakar who is asking, Dr. Ahmeti mentioned how the letters of recommendation can mention the role we played in the research project. But when we do research in a different specialty, should we choose to submit the LOR from our research mentor from that different specialty or prefer letters from surgeons only?
If you have the opportunity to get them from surgeons, even if your mentor, if they're a Nobel Prize winner, then for sure, if they're very well known across the globe or nationally, then yes. But if you have the opportunity to have a letter from a senior, like associate professor, professor level surgeon versus your mentor, I would use the surgeon ones. You can gauge everybody you ask to write you a recommendation letter. You can gauge your relationship with them, the quality of the letter they're going to write you, but you can also gauge the enthusiasm that they're writing it for you. You will not be able to see it, but if there's not a lot of enthusiasm, or if they just know you superficially and you have a mentor who knows you great, then I would use that one. You're all very smart and you can weigh that yourself, and I'm sure that everybody in this call can make that decision. But if it's chairman of Cleveland Clinic in surgery versus your mentor in research who is a neurologist, I'd say take the Cleveland chairman letter.
Thank you so much. So we have one more question. So since all the US MDs have clinical training in the US, what should IMGs have in addition to hands-on training in the US to be invited for an interview?
I think what we talked in the past kind of answers all that. Having some research helps, having good recommendation letter helps, having good scores gets you through the door. I personally, I take very big pride that since I kind of moved into program leadership, we started actually considering IMGs, which while in the past we didn't when there was no IMG in that ranking process. So I'm very proud of that. But honestly, I would say my feeling, and this is not any math that we use or anything, but my feeling from the sense that I get in the room when we discuss you versus John Smith, okay, your score needs to be about 20 points better to be considered an equal. That's just the bottom line. And I try to help that because I feel that's unfair. And I try to moderate for that. But again, I'm one voice in a room of many.
So my last question would be, so someone went through all of the advice, got an interview, went through the interview advice that you just answered and all, and he or she matched. So I hope we all get matched, all of the participants who are here. So what would be your final points to someone who have matched, and how is like work and life once you match in the US? Fill us with some hopes and passion here.
Yeah. Let's start pre-July 1st. Okay. We are all gonna need visas. I needed a visa. Make sure you're on top of your stuff. Your impression on the program is going to start before you start the program. Okay. If you're tardy with all of your administrative stuff that you need to do to get your visa, the administrators of the program will let us know that. Okay. So that's already starting to not leave a good impression. If you're calling me June 25th and telling me that you have an interview for June 28th and it's going to take another week for you to get the visa, that already lets me know that you're maybe not on top of things. So you can start that way before, okay? Because you need to be here a week before residency starts to do the orientation, or maybe 10 days. Is it 10 days, Dev? I think it's almost 10 days now that you need to come before to do ACLS and orientation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you stay on top of all that, because as a prelim, you are being judged with a very different metric from categorical residents, okay? Because you're doing a 1-year interview. It's not 20 minutes in a room with me anymore. Now you're doing a whole year with me and with the whole program. So it is very important to keep that in mind, that it starts the moment you find out that you're staying with somebody with X program. Reach out, tell them how excited you are. What are the next steps for me to get my visa? When will you give me the DS 2019? All that stuff to get going with applying the visa. I find that especially in the subcontinent, the consulates and the embassies tend to be notoriously slow and have a much longer process to get into interview and everything. So just be cognizant of that. Then once you get started, be collegial, be sweet to everybody, respect everybody. Be honest with not being comfortable with things and not knowing things, but nobody is going to take you by the hand, sit you in front of a blackboard, and draw with chalk in it to tell you how to do your job. You need to learn on the job. Okay. So it's learning by osmosis. Figure out which one is the best resident there and try to emulate what they're doing. Okay. They're not going to tell you do this, do that, do this, but you are going to be able to see what they're doing to become the best. Okay. And then another thing is we have different degrees of resident qualities in every residency. Find out which one is the best one and emulate that one. Sometimes the super fun ones and cool ones might not be the good residents. So don't emulate them. Okay. I've actually seen that over the last couple of years of, some people jeopardizing their categorical opportunities by associating with a super friendly, super, a lot of partying, a lot of that stuff, and emulating their behavior, and not really looking at the ones that might be a little dry, but they're super professional and very good clinicians. So pick who is that good one and emulate them.
Yeah, and I think that was fantastically put together. One piece I think I'd like to add to Dr. Mentor's statements is, in a prelim year, if you really want to impress the program and want to be considered to the categorical position, it is important that you demonstrate receptiveness to feedback. Time and again, we see people have their personalities, have their individualities, they're smart, they want to do things their way. But then when you're training under a program director, you have to understand you're training under that faculty's license. you're training under that faculty's oversight. Now, you can have the way you want to do things, but you have to understand when the faculty tells you, let's do it this way. If you start innovating and doing things your way, then what's going to happen is that is just going to show that you're not receptive to feedback. And I guarantee you that Dr. Mentor will not pick such a student. Mentor, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, I think that is so well put, Dev. I think I'll add another layer of challenge to it all is that I will do things a little different than my partner, who will do different things a little bit different than the other partner. Okay. And I'm sure it's the same with you, with your program, Dev. It's everybody. So you will need to find that flexibility. Today it's Dr. Manuru, and this is how we deal with AKI. Okay. So try to learn that. And if Dr. Patluri comes next, and Dr. Patluri says on the same sort of clinical picture, we're doing something different, please do not say, well, Dr. Manuru did it that way. Okay. That is just very uninsightful, very immature. Do not do that. Okay. So be patient. There's going to be very frustrating moments. They're going to be, you are confident you just read that last paper on this program, on this problem, clinical problem, and your attending is doing the opposite. It is your attending's absolute authority to do that. You can share your opinion. Just say, hey, actually, there's this new paper that just came out. It's really interesting. Let's do what you're saying, and I'll send you that paper, and we can discuss it later. Okay. So you can do it in that way. You can have your impact, but don't go against the grain. You are here to get your categorical spot. You're here to finish your, 5 years in surgery or 3 years in internal medicine or whatnot. So don't go against the grain. You will be able to learn, and then you will know. Well, was Dr. Manuru's way best? Was Dr. Patluri's way best? Was Dr. Sanala's way best? You get to learn all those approaches.
Yeah, yeah. No, receptiveness to feedback and following it up with doing the actions that have been told is very important. If you deviate, that basically speaks. You might be talented, you might be the smartest person in the world, but it just speaks that you just don't want to listen. So then that becomes a red flag.
Agreed. They both have their weight, but I think if you're coming to America, that gives you more opportunities to get into a position quicker. Okay. If you're coming to only become a surgeon, it is going to be very arduous. It's going to be challenging, but residents do match. Some residents take a decade. Okay. They'll do a prelim year, they'll do a PGY2 prelim year, they'll move into some sort of unaccredited fellowship, clinical fellowship, trying to find that open categorical spot to get into. It could be a very long process. If surgery is truly your passion, do not get dissuaded. We've all made it. We know some of, there's like a very senior and probably the surgeon that we all turn to when things become very challenging clinically, who is an immigrant and who came and took the longest route around, was a surgeon in a different country, came to do a fellowship, did another fellowship, then was able to match as a completely trained surgeon into like a PGY3 and complete the residency to be eligible for the boards. So if surgery is your passion, don't get dissuaded. There's ways to get around it. Scores, unfortunately, are very important, and they can be something very helpful, or they're going to be your absolute barrier to getting into surgery. But then if, your goal is better life in America, go for it. There's really no difference. Surgery, as you all know, is going to be a very challenging career. Very satisfying too, but very challenging. I do honestly believe that, a lot of my colleagues that might be in family medicine or working outpatient clinics and stuff, they have a much better quality of life than I do, when it comes to work-life stuff. But, I find such huge professional satisfaction that it compensates for everything else for me. And if you're that person, then, go after it. Follow your dreams.
Thank you. Thank you very much, mentor. This is very helpful. I think this session was a fantastic session. You've given so many perspectives from a surgery program leader that a lot of medical students will benefit from knowing. And it's very hard to get a surgical program leader to speak to the international medical graduates. You being an international medical graduate, giving us this time during your vacation is so respected, and we're thankful for all of what you do and for what you're doing for us today. Uh, Please don't reach out to Dr. Mentor for observerships and this and that, because he's already tied with all the application processes and interviews. If you have any questions, feel free to just direct message me and Dr. Abhiraj. If it's something that we feel that, yes, we could take it back to Dr. Mentor, we'll be happy to do that.
Yep. And then, Dev, I think we can share here. Don't mean to interrupt or prolong this longer, but if we have medical students that are online or are watching this, University of North Dakota does provide through VSLO system. You can find that probably through our website somewhere. Does provide rotations, clinical rotations for medical students to come and spend a month with us, in surgery. But I think you can do it in internal medicine as well. And I know that's very expensive for somebody to kind of pay here a month to travel, apartment, and all that stuff. But we will help you with a visa application, or not to help you, but we will give you all the necessary paperwork for the visa application to sponsor. So there's that opportunity that our medical school does provide.
No, thank you. Yes, that's helpful information. Yes. All righty. I think it's past 8:15. Thank you, Mentor. Thank you. Have a safe trip back home.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow, Dev.
Yeah, thank
Everyone,
you.
good luck.
Bye.
All the best on your future career.
Thank you.